Hello everyone, I am HADGS Jayatilaka. The topic of my research study is developing a conceptual framework for social media use during disasters in Sri Lanka. So first of all, let's have a brief introduction. Over the recent past, various types of hazards have been occurring all over the world, which turn into disasters and have made a severe impact on human lives, infrastructure, environmental, and economy. These figures show some of the catastrophic disasters which were occurred very recently around the world, and these graphs gives an idea about the damages and losses reported due to the various types of hazards occurred around the world over the past years. Sri Lanka also has been experiencing various types of hazards which have turned into disasters over the past years, and a considerable amount of human lives and properties have been impacted due to these disasters. From this table, you can see the severity of the damages and losses reported due to several hazards and their subsequent disasters which occurred over the past 20-year periods in Sri Lanka. Now, now let's move on to the disaster risk management. Disaster risk management involves a sum of all events, services, and actions that can be taken every phases of disasters with the goal of preventing a disaster and its impact. In disaster risk management, we mainly consider three phases of disaster, such as before disaster, during a disaster, and after disaster. And also in disaster risk management cycle has been introduced, which is a continuous process that goes through the phases of risk reductions, emergency response, and recovery. And it illustrates the activities which are proceeded by several parties, such as general public, government, organizations, to reduce the damages and losses of disaster. In there, researchers have identified that the communication is a key component in disaster risk management cycle. From reviewing the literature, it can be identified that there are several terms of communication in related to disaster, such as disaster communications, risk communication, and crisis communication. By considering all those terms of communication, disaster risk communication has been introduced, which is basically involves the disseminating and receiving of disaster risk information, which can be defined as a comprehensive information which include hazard exposure, vulnerability, and capacity on all dimensions of disaster risk. Many researchers have identified that there is a connection between the disaster risk communication and activities of each phases in disaster risk management cycle. And this figure clearly shows that connection. And also researchers have identified that the disaster risk communication can be taken place via various communication channels. These communication channels can be divided into two categories such as traditional channels and modern channels. This table shows the various examples for the traditional channels and for the modern channels. With the rapid development of information and communication technology, people have tended to use modern communication channels rather than traditional communication channels. India, as an emerging and evolving communication technology, nowadays, use of social media for communication in disasters has become a common practice among the public. Several studies have been shown that the worldwide community are using social media as a communications tool for the disaster-related communication during disasters. Let's see what is the general use of social media around the world. So in October 2020, 4.14 billion of people across the world are using social media, which is equivalent to 53% of the total global population. And this graph shows the global usage of several social media platforms and messenger applications. And considering the Sri Lankan context, 6.4 million people are using social media, which is equivalent to about 30% of the total Sri Lankan populations. And this figure further shows the usage of social media applications by the Sri Lankan community. So now let's see what is the reasons of use social media for disaster risk communication. Social media provides advanced facilities related to disasters, and also social media provides a multi-directional communication mechanism such as one to one to many, many to many, and with that, a huge community can be addressed by the social media, and also several interfaces provided by social media for communication, such as photographs, video clips, live videos, text messages, and voice recordings. And with that, information can disseminate attractively and effectively through the social media, and also social media can use without other important utilities such as electricity, and this is a very important during a disaster situation. And also it is convenient to use social media, and social media provides a timely information sharing. And considering the current use of social media for disaster risk communication in Sri Lanka, Disaster Management Center is the leading agency for disaster risk management and disaster risk communication in Sri Lanka, and they disseminate disaster-related information through their social media applications such as Facebook. Apart from DMC, there are other disaster-related department and organizations such as Meteorology Department, Epidemiology Department, NVRO, and so on, and they use their own social media applications to disseminate disaster-related information to the general public. And also news media, community groups, influencers are also used there on social media applications to disseminate disaster information to the general public. So now let's see what is the importance of developing a framework for use of social media during disasters. In the as a emphasizing Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, introducing strategies to avoid and mitigate exposure to hazards and vulnerability is one of a key component to prevent new and reducing existing disaster risks. Researchers have been identified that the effective use of social media can be considered as a major disaster risk reduction strategy. Considering the current condition of use of social media during disasters, several barriers and gaps can be identified which are caused to reduce the effectiveness of the use of social media during disasters. And the studies have been identified that the conceptual framework on the use of social media during disasters is what is currently missing from the literature review, from the literature. And it has been identified that such framework can be used to identify the future improvements and implementation in the context of using social media. And also, this framework would be helpful to identify the existing steps and the barriers of social media usage during disasters. With that, the objective of this research study is development of a conceptual framework for use of social media during disasters in Sri Lanka. And this is the methodology what we followed for this study, conducting a detailed literature review. From that, identifying the users of social media during disasters and identifying the users of social media during disasters. Uh, Several studies have illustrated and defined the different types of users who use social media during disaster to communicate disaster related information. In there, I have mentioned several types of users, individuals, organizations, news media, community groups, journalists, social media influencers. And also through the literature review, several uses of social media can be identified for each phases of disaster risk management cycle. And this table shows some of the uses for each phases of disaster risk management cycle. And let's move on to the development of the framework. So this is the proposed framework for the use of social media during disasters, which has developed from this study with the aid of the facts gained through the literature review. It has developed mainly under the two main categories, which are actors and actions. Under the actors category, the main indicator is the users. Users can be introduced either as a responders or producers because social media provides a multi-directional communication mechanism. Therefore, every subcategory belongs to the users can be both provide and receive the disaster related information via social media. Community and agencies are two main categories of users. Government, organizations, and news media are belong to the agency category. The community can be divided into two subcategories such as groups and individuals, volunteers, philanthropists, researchers, and several other teams of individuals who have been gathered with the purpose for the disaster related activities such as early warning, disseminating, providing reliefs and aids, research purposes, and so on. And also the two types of individuals such as influencers and non-influencers can be identified from the literature. Influencers can be identified among the individuals according to the degree of the influence that they make on the disaster related information dissemination via social media. As the last mile, non-influencers can be separated into two according to their location, such as within the disaster zone and out of the disaster zone. Under the actions category, the main indicator is the users. This framework further illustrates that there are different users of social media in every phases of disaster risk management cycle, and also there are several types of interactions among the users of social media that can be identified in the context of the using social media in disasters. Through the literature review, it has been identified three major types of interactions, such as interaction among agencies, interaction between agencies and community, interaction among community. This is the extended framework of previously described conceptual framework, which has illustrates those interactions. And also this shows the various types of disaster phases and activities that each user can be participated by using social media. Through the literature review, several key facts were identified in the context of use of social media by the non-influencers in disasters. It is very important to identify those key facts because non-influencers are the most important part in the context in the using social media during disasters because they are the most vulnerable users due to the disasters. Perception of the non-influencers about the information received via social media is one of the key facts in the context. In order to have a better perception, the quality of the information received via social media should be at a higher level. There are several quality indicators have been identified in past researchers to evaluate the quality of the information received via social media and disasters, such as accuracy, timeliness, usefulness, and reliability. Apart from that quality indicators, several other key facts have been identified from the literature review, such as the general use of social media by the non-influencers, identifying the existing methods to communicate disaster-related informations, and the awareness about the capabilities of using social media in disasters, and also the advantages and disadvantages of these existing methods and these the newly social media method. So with that, this figure illustrates the indicated framework which has been developed, including all these quality indicators and other important key facts. So, as the future implementations of this study, it is expected to identify the existing practices of using social media by the Sri Lankan community in disasters. In order to do that, a questionnaire will be developed based on the proposed conceptual framework in this study and will be circulated among the general public. And then by analyzing the results would be obtained that questionnaire, the existing condition of the use of social media during disasters by Sri Lankan community will be identified with the prevailing problems and gaps. And also we can identify several key terms such as variables that influence the use of social media during disasters, and variables that influence the select information sources on social media, and user perception about the quality and effectiveness information on social media, and identify the suitable social media platforms and the effective approaches, so on. Also, it is expected to discuss the strategies that would be helpful in future to bridge the existing gaps and enhance the future implementation of the social media in disaster events of Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taitlak, and very informative presentation. Yeah, actually, as you mentioned, the social media is a crucial and plays a vital role now in the early weather and other also early warning early warning process. And also actually we have experience about the using that social media in our weather forecast and early warnings, and also we identified some points, especially origin of the message and also the accuracy, and also the matter of timing, because especially the some we know the experience there is no such the most recent, actually we sometimes we saw the past messages. So that kind of things, I think you already mentioned some points. Is there any that the that means is there any procedure at this framework to identify the accuracy, especially the where is the origin? Is there any way of doing that within that framework?
Yes, madam. Actually, this is a first part of the study. So, actually, the main objective of our study is actually to consider the how to implement this social media communication tools for this disaster risk communication in Sri Lanka. So in there, first of all, as the first part of the study, we developed this framework, and with this developed framework, we prepared a questionnaire. Based on that, the key facts and parameters of that questionnaire, we developed that. The parameters of the framework. We developed that questionnaire, and actually, we circulated among the community, and then we got the results. So from that questionnaire, we got an idea about that what is that community perception about what is that their reliable sources and what is the accuracy. So in that case, we got most of them have responded that the government information sources, actually they want the government information sources.
Yes.
Because that actually they propose that the social media platforms of the government sources, there should be a very properly, and there should be a very attractive way, because that most of them are, they don't aware about this, that social media platforms, like examples for that recently for the DMC or meteorology, but we have asked that, have you aware about these Facebook pages of meteorology? So most of them, they don't aware about if there is a Facebook page. Or for I mean that we address for that every part of this country and a very last mile of this community. So but actually they don't know there's a problem that we identified. So and then they believe the accuracy, the government information sources they mostly trust, and so from that we can identify those facts. We have identified that, and I didn't.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Atilaka. There is one question for you: how to handle hoax from fake warnings or fake news before and during a disaster?
Yeah, that's the same answer that I think. If we follow that reliable source, that means that that government. So actually, that's the thing. We need to enhance that the use of social media by the government is to know that. So those are the very reliable information sources. So then everybody going to believe their information. So actually that according to that this framework and the final as a one of the final outcome, we propose that the social media use of the government disaster related agencies should be enhanced. So in that case, we can reduce that they are disseminating the false and rumors information.
Yes, yeah, and also I agree with you. Another thing is we experience some kind of the timing, especially for the warnings. So especially for tornado like warnings is very there is no much time, especially tsunami. So the timing is very important. So I think it should be taken to consider, no?
Yes, in that case, that when we consider about traditional media, so considering that that tsunami alarming tone issue at that 3 a.m. In that case, most of the people are sleep very tight. So in that case, they didn't get any alert from the any traditional media such radio, electricity. But considering the social media, if we can develop this nowadays they have their alert system. So in that their mobile phone, they get a tone or say they get a special alert. So there are very dedicated apps now. They are very dedicated. Disaster related dedicated apps. So in that case, if we already connect that mobile phone to the internet, so when that related organization issue an warning, then we got an alerted warning. But if we consider traditional method or television or radio, they didn't give because they want electricity and they already need to connect electricity. But actually it's one important thing, social media, so we can get in that cases get information very quickly.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Adler. I think, is there any question from our participants? Floor is for you. If there are any clarification or suggestions, you can add now. Dr. Noor, do you have something to add?
No, actually, I think the research is very interesting research, and also the question made by Ms. Anusha is very relevant. I think I have done some research in the UK context as well regarding flood warnings. The issue is with the fake warnings received by different people. So the people have a tendency not to listen to the social media, so they just go to the traditional media as a result. So I think we have to take that into consideration, how to build some accuracy. I think Gaindu gave a very right answer as well. So, but I think that aspect needs to be considered. Otherwise, people will still be struggling to receive the warnings because they will just think, oh, this is something fake news. So I think that is a very, very, very important aspect that we need to consider. So thank you, Gaindu.
Thank you very much, sir.
With that, I would like to move to our second speaker today. That is Professor Siri Hettige, Emeritus Professor of Sociology, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka. I think most of you know him. So the research he's going to present is on a review on the present status of community level DM communities in tsunami early warning system. Thank you, Professor. It's open to you.
Okay. How many minutes do I have?
Professor, you got 10 minutes.
Yeah, because earlier one it was more than half an hour. So anyway, okay, thank you, Nuwan. Let me make a couple of preliminary remarks. One is that this paper was prepared by two people, joint paper actually, with Namal Veerasena and myself. He's from the University of Colombo and CDRI, Center for Development Research and Interventions. And this paper, as you can already see, is related to Indian Ocean tsunami early warning and mitigation system. You're all familiar with this system, so I'm not going to say very much about it, except to say that it is a very complex, multi-layered system, starting with the regional, arrangements, reaching down to the national level, and then of course extended to the grassroots, because that is where the people are living at a community level. And I think this last mile is as important as all other aspects of the system, because if the intended beneficiaries, intended target group is not reached with the early warning, and also of course whatever that follows after the warning, it is not going to be very useful, because at the end of the day, the aim of any early warning system is to save lives, and also of course to prevent various other huge negative impacts on communities. Now, as already one mentioned, this particular paper is focused on the local level. In fact, it covers the last mile, as it is widely known. The paper is based on fieldwork done in 2018, and we have done fieldwork in 5 out of 7 regions, the coastal regions in the country. So in other words, it has covered large part of the areas that are affected by a tsunami. Of course, the extent of the tsunami, the extent of the impact depends on the nature of the scale and the nature of the tsunami, but nevertheless, it has covered these areas. And then the methodology that we have used, it's basically we have used qualitative data collection techniques using interviewers to go around these areas and interviewing key informants to start with, and then going down to the community level, and then conducting focus groups at a community level to give the members of the communities to participate in a group discussion where they could provide feedback to the questions that we posed at the focus group. And then also, of course, we have done observations at a community level to see how arrangements are being made to really take care of the whole system at the community level. I'm not going to take too much time to talk about fieldwork. Now I would like to move on to the results of the study, which we have discussed in great detail in the paper itself. Now, as for the system that is in place at a community level, I want to mention that it is very, very important, because even in a small area, people are scattered in different places, And of course, depending on where they are, their vulnerability increases. For instance, certain areas are going to be affected more than the others in the case of a tsunami. So the people who are really, in vulnerable areas are very important, and of course they have to be reached by the system, and of course the early warning system really is effective only if the local arrangements to reach out to these people and then to take various measures to mitigate the impacts. I think they are very, very important. So the vulnerable identification of vulnerable groups, and then also, of course, the various arrangements they have to facilitate, for instance, evacuation, if there is a need for evacuation. And then also to provide whatever assistance that they need to really respond to, the system. So we basically looked at how the system is functioning at a community level. So what we have really found is that the functioning of the system is not even. In other words, it is uneven. There are areas where it is functioning quite well, whereas in others it is not so. So the point here is that technically, the arrangements are good. For instance, at a community level, at a Gram Sevaka level, Gram Seva division level, you have a disaster management committee headed by the Gram Sevaka, that is the village level officer, and of course the other members are there. Now this committee, I think, is the focal point, as far as the early warning system is concerned, early warning and mitigation system is concerned. Now, the functioning of this committee on a sustained basis, I think, is very, very important. So the point is that if the committee is not functioning on a sustained basis, then the community becomes vulnerable in case of a tsunami warning, and of course in case of a tsunami. So it is important to look at what really ensures the effective functioning of these committees, and of course various other arrangements that are built around these committees. Now, what we observed in many places was that some of the committees have become, ineffective, in the sense that they are not really functioning, in a sustained way, and that, I think, is a major issue, because in a situation like this, you can't have a non-functioning committee in a community which is vulnerable. So the main problem here is how to keep these committees functioning on an ongoing basis. So there we have issues like motivation. People should be motivated, and of course it is important that they have the necessary guidance from various officers and so on and so forth at a divisional level and also at a district level. And then there is a need for various facilities that they require to function effectively and so on and so forth. So these are sort of issues, and of course the identification of vulnerable members of the community, I think, in advance is important, because then you know where the vulnerable members of the community are, so that you can immediately take action to not only inform them, but if there's a need to evacuate them. So these are some of the issues that we have really uncovered, after the field work and analysis of the data that we have collected. And finally, I want to say a few words by way of recommendations. I think it is important to ensure that these committees are, somehow facilitated on an ongoing basis, and keep them engaged in disaster, mitigation, activities, so that they don't become, let's say, ineffective and so on. And then, of course, the facilities, as I already mentioned, should be there. And I think in some cases, they need some equipment and so on, and of course some resources. And then finally, it is important to evaluate, the situation at a community level. In other words, if you really don't, evaluate, the arrangements that are there in terms of their functionality, then they might, deteriorate and degenerate and would become dysfunctional. So it is important to do that. And then, of course, monitoring, I think, is important, continuous monitoring, and it can be done periodically, but nevertheless, based on evaluation of the arrangements and, the monitoring of how they continue, I think can be very, very important. And this feedback that you can get from the community level on an ongoing basis can really, help strengthen the arrangements for early warning and mitigation at the community level. I think that is very critical, because then this whole system is going to, be more effective, and is going to really achieve its, objectives if the last mile is also, made as effective as it should be. Okay, with that, I want to say thank you once again, and I hope that I have given some understanding of what we have done in this paper. And of course, the paper itself can be accessed, I think, through the system. I do not know. Thank you very much.
Professor Hettier, thank you very much. You are actually very important, timely, the needed the research findings, and also your recommendation. As the Department of Meteorology is the focal point for issuing tsunami early warnings, this is very important, because it only tsunami early warning itself can't do the saving the life. So your initiative is very good. Yeah. And I think before my questions, there is one question from Mr. Rigo to get how do we sustain such committees and motivate them, and how do we keep them functioning? Should it focus only on tsunami or multi-hazard, multi-hazards?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I think, in Sri Lanka, as you know, tsunami is not the most, I mean, we had a tsunami in 2004, and thereafter there have been tsunami warning, but we didn't have a tsunami. But of course, the other disasters are far more frequent in Sri Lanka, and therefore this disaster management committee, doesn't have to concentrate on only on tsunamis, because other disasters are far more frequent, and people have to deal with them. So I think certainly it has to be linked to the disasters that occur. It may be floods, it may be cyclones, it may be earthquakes, depending. I mean, it may be various other coastal hazards and so on and so forth. So, so my feeling is that it is up to the national institutions to make use of the arrangement that you have for tsunami early warning, let's say, and mitigation, to really address other issues so that the people can be kept engaged in disaster management related, activities on an ongoing basis, so that it will not, degenerate over a period of time and become dysfunctional.
Thank you very much. And also he asked, can I get the full title and text of the paper? And he gave us the email address as well.
Okay, I think that can be sent. Yeah, I think that can be sent. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is already announced in the full title of the paper is already mentioned there in the program.
Yeah. And also that I have one more question. I think, as you mentioned, yes, we should keep them activated with that committee, because I think especially then during the some drill. So I think they are engaged in that type of drills. No, is it?
Yes, they do.
Is it not enough? No.
That is because that is a kind of very it's not something that keeps people engaged on an ongoing basis. No, it comes and goes. You see, whereas people can be motivated to undertake various other activities. Like, for instance, it is up to the institutions to really get these committees to function on an ongoing basis. And I think they are the best people to decide, how can we get these committee members or committees, involved in various activities related to disaster management and disaster management and disaster risk reduction. Because I think disaster risk reduction would probably create more, opportunities for people to, engage in various activities, because there we are not talking about a disaster. We are talking about, doing, various things to, let's say, reduce the risk of a disaster. So I think that might be a better way to really keep them engaged. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor Hettiye. Is there any question from our other participants? This is time for you. How about Dr. Nuwan?
Thanks, Anusha. I think it's a very interesting research area, and I very correctly, Professor Siri mentioned that they should be kept activated, because I have just to share with some Maldives experience that they have this committees trained after the 2004 tsunami in their local island councils, which are now actually sort of deactivated. So even the officers got transferred to different islands, so they are struggling to redo the program. So I think it's really important to keep them activated during these processes, as Professor Siri Hettiye mentioned. So with that, I would like to move to our third presenter. Third presenter today is Dr. Saranga Vitanage. She is assistant director. She is assistant director at the Disaster Management Center, Sri Lanka, for education and awareness. Dr. Saranga is going to present today about flood risk assessment and community-based early warning systems for Ratnapura DS division. I think it's a good move from talk about, because we were initially talking about tsunami risk, and now we are moving to flood risk. So it's a good move. Over to you, Dr. Saranga.
Good evening, co-chairs and ladies and gentlemen. I'm Nadika Vitanage, Assistant Director, Training and Education, and this is a joint paper with Mudita Manjula, Assistant Director, District Disaster Management Coordinating Unit, Ratnapura. The topic is flood risk assessment and community-based early warning system for Ratnapura. This is the content of the session and introduction. Flooding is the most experience event, annual event for the Ratnapura DS division. Type of hazardous event observed in Ratnapura: flood, landslide, bank failures, erosion, and subsidence. And Ratnapura DSD is located in the Kalu River basin, and Kalu River is the third largest river in Sri Lanka. There are several major flood events, recent historical flood events, 1947, 2003, and 2017, high flood risk events. And for this study, based on 2003 and 2017 flood event. So this is the Ratnapura city, and all this city center has inundated with the flood. Ratnapura DS division is consisting with the high mountain, steep slopes, and the edge of the DS division is the floodplain area, and it is located in the Ratnapura city, and the Ratnapura Municipal Council and built-up area is highly vulnerable. So major and overall objective is this research is to conduct the flood risk assessment for the Ratnapura DSD, with considering the Ratnapura flood inundation area. The major hazard risk and analysis goes to the Ratnapura Municipal Council, and the focus in the community-based early warning system for the flood risk dissemination. The analysis is consisting with the flood hazard, vulnerability hazard analysis, and the consequence analysis. And finally, the combination of the flood, vulnerable, and the consequence conduct the flood risk analysis. And develop the web-based system for the community-based early warning for the flood early warning dissemination to the end-to-end early warning dissemination. And considering about the flood situation, develop the flood mitigation structural mitigation model. There are two types of data, both primary and secondary data. Especially for the primary data collection, we conducted for the questionnaire survey, as well as the door-to-door GPS data collection, and conduct some workshops and with the vulnerable communities to validate the hazard and flood inundation maps, and especially some flood vulnerable areas building survey conducted, and building type and structures, as well as the their communities also we identified, prepared the statistics. So this is how our field data collection, and most of the areas, police stations and some schools, municipal council, and all these areas were inside the municipal councils are highly flood vulnerable. And there are some GIS analysis and statistical analysis. For both digital data and the statistical data, we apply for this research. And flooding is the historical event and the annual event for the Ratnapura city. And this memorial statue is located to memorize the 1933 Saint Cartagasian, who sacrificed his life in rescuing some flood-affected people. There are several critical flood situation in Ratnapura. Some critical flood level is over 24 meters in the mean sea level, and some are 21 meters in the mean sea level. And for the hazard analysis, we conduct the flood inundation model and different flood hazard analysis based on the stream gauge data and rainfall data in the past 30 years analysis. And according to this analysis, we identified 100-year flood is similar to the 2003 and 2017 flood inundation rate. And Ratnapura is the annual flood situation. Therefore, it's gradually developing the flood plain, and with mapping using this 100-year and 50-year flood inundation, we can identify the development of this flood plain. And the flood vulnerability analysis we conducted for each and every GN division in flood vulnerable mapping analysis. And we identified all the flood vulnerable buildings, and we divided into high, moderate, and low hazard based on the irrigation department criteria and variables, as well as their risk categories identified from the field survey. So these are some vulnerable mapping activity we conducted in the after the 2000 and 2003 flood situation. There were 45,750 families were affected in flood situation in 2017. Especially more than 6-7 GN division is the more than 30,000 families. So this is the 2017 building affected data. So in 2018 we conducted the building survey, damage survey for all buildings in the Ratnapura DS division. We mapped flood affected and flood damaged GN division. Thereafter, we conducted a special database developed using these all details, and their physical condition of this building and their demographic buildings, the residents, owners, and add to this database. And this stickers, we introduced the sticker system for all the flood vulnerable buildings, and we divided into 3 categories: high, moderate, and low hazard, based on the irrigation department variables. And with the support of the district secretary and the political authorities and the special officials, all together in one day, we apply all these with the support of GN leaders. All the GN divisions we completed fixing these stickers. And according to hazard vulnerability, we conduct some statistical analysis for the capacity analysis. Ratnapura New Town and the Kolandagal area is the high elevated area, and it is the safety areas when there's all the administrative activities shifted to the Ratnapura New Town, because of the earlier administrative activities were centered in the Ratnapura city area, but for 40 or 15 years back, it is shifted to the Ratnapura New Town area. Then all the administrative activities are safe, but still the commercial activities are in the Ratnapura city center. Therefore, still is the low capacities also there, hazard also very high in this area. So this is the hazard, high hazard areas, especially the Ratnapura Batukendra town and the Devalagaon area is a high vulnerable because of the number of population and the big high. And the community based is with the technical agencies and the GN leaders, support of the technical agency. And once we received the early warning messages, it's received to the disaster management officer, district disaster management officer, district secretary and divisional secretaries. So developed with the web-based system, and it is very it's like an app, and it is very easy to transfer this information via the laptop, desktop, or any kind of mobile phones, any kind using the smart mobile phones only. And we transfer it to the GN leaders and the 3 identified officers from the Samudra Economic Development and Agriculture officers, and other 2 members of the GN communities simultaneously. And all these 3 officers, we divided in the GN division into the 3 sectors. For each GN, each officer has the 1/3 of the population families for each GN division. Therefore, to cover entire GN division, we divided these families among these 3 identified 3 officers, and it's giving the some help to our GN leader. And there's another responsibility for alternative officers we also identify. After that, we randomly check whether these officers are received this message as giving the phone call. And we train all the GN leaders and the GN committee members for this program to how to disseminate this. And this is the interface of our web-based program. And we print all the identified officers, detail, phone numbers, and all things for every GN division. And this document printed and distributed among the leaders and identified officers. Another important thing is the features of this GS division also very difficult to giving the disseminate the early warning messages, and especially the short period of time the flood water is reached to the Ratnapura city area. Therefore, it's need a good dynamic rainfall forecasting system as well as the system for the Ratnapura city. So now we come into the presentation. The conclusion is this research is based on the development of the flood hazard vulnerability and risk assessment of the flood vulnerable area in the Ratnapura division. The flood vulnerable area is the Ratnapura Municipal Council and adjacent GNDs, and we developed the flood vulnerability analysis for all these flood affected buildings considering their population, and after that we conduct the risk assessment, then finally develop the web-based system to disseminate the flood early warning messages. So this is the recommendation: development of the flood environmental protection areas along the Kaluganga and Veganga rivers, and development of the new building guidelines and flood resilient building codes with some 2-3 story buildings to introducing for this flood inundation area, and some structural mitigation modification for the city area, as well as the dynamic and fall early warning. And the geographical condition, it is consisting from some area, good area for the reservoir building, and this we collected rainwater and we can transfer this water into the dry area of the city, and very good water management system can be developed, as well as along the river bank, if it is strengthening this river bank with embankments or other some cement system, canalling system, as well as for the overflow canals in the flood water transforming, it also very important, and some allowing areas for the floods, and we can develop some small reservoirs and things, city areas, and we give the some tourism interest for the city. So these are the, and we want to be acknowledged, Disaster Management Center, District Secretary of Ratnapura, Divisional Secretary of Ratnapura, and all the GN officials in the DSD in Ratnapura, education engineers, and the meteorological officers, and the UADA, and the Commission of the Ratnapura Municipal Council, and Red Cross, and other UNDP and the university student gave their support for this program.
Ms. Anusha, do you want to start the?
Yeah, sorry, Dr. Nuwan, I have some technical issue. Yeah, now it's okay for the internet issue. Yeah, actually, the study is very good and very comprehensive, and I think it's a very good guideline for the risk identifying the risk areas and vulnerable areas. So, and also actually we had good knowledge about the history and historical events, and very good study. I think what are is there any recommendation for the community, you highlighted the early warning, community-based early warning system. Is there any recommendation for that community-based system, Dr. Saranga?
Yes, actually, thank you, Ms. Anusha. This system we developed to send the message via the smartphone or other the administration is district secretary and the assistant director of the disaster management in district and the additional district secretary. And we want to be, we cannot be depend only with the SMS system. So, so within the community, we have to identify it, because we divided into all these responsibilities, families, into the 3 officers. So they sometimes they may have more than 500 or 1,000 families to share this message. So this is some fundamental stages we developed this one, but it is according to the district secretaries and our district officers view, it is more than 50% success to working with the community using the new technology. So they are starting another system, not only with depending with this SMS, to some small scale siren system in the Kaluganga River flood inundation area, to the electrical sirens, low cost electrical siren system to cover the some vulnerable communities in this along the Kaluganga River bank.
I think Miss Anusha, there's some technical difficulty again with Miss Anusha's connection. So actually, just to add, Dr. Saranga, it's a very interesting research, and it's glad to see that these sort of research happening in Sri Lanka, particularly to flood in Ratnapura area, which is highly vulnerable for floods. So just adding to that, I'm just wondering whether, because you said that you have trained officers and Grama Niladaris and so on and so on. So is there any mechanism to sort of continue the program? Because I know, as I'm aware, maybe as far as I know, maybe the Grama Niladaris are getting transfers to a different area, or maybe the DS officers. So in that case, is there any way that these people, these information can be updated and the mechanism continues? Is there any sort of post-evaluation program?
Yes, yes, Dr. Nuwan, it is very interesting question, because unlike the technological usage, we are using some demographic application, therefore it is very dynamic. So this training, so annually they are conducting these trainings. Sometimes actually for the with the cost and the printing cost and the awareness, the cost of the awareness, we cannot do actually. We want to do it actually for the ones at least for the ones 6 months, but for the annual budget allocation, we are getting this for the community awareness. Therefore, annually they are printing these books and the training.
Excellent. That's a very good to know. That's a very good thing to know. So Anusha, actually, I just picked one question because it seems like your connection is lost again. So do you have any other questions, or are there any questions from the audience, Anusha? I think yeah, I think we don't have any questions from the audience. Then shall we move into the next question, next presenter?
Yes, of course, I think so.
Thank you, Dr. Saranga. So with this, we will now move to the final presenter. I am a bit concerned that the presenter has mentioned there's a little problem with his connection as well. But since that's the idea of having the recorded presentation, so let's move to the presentation, and I hope he will be online at the Q&A session. So our next presenter is Mr. Pradeep Kodipili. He is Deputy Director for Early Warning under Emergency Operations at the Disaster Management Center, Sri Lanka. And he's going to present about analysis of the capacity of disaster early warning reception of Kalutara district and 4 most vulnerable divisional areas in Sri Lanka. So if Pradeep is not online, that's still fine. So our technical team will start playing the video.
No, I will. I'm here, Nuwan. I'm here. That's okay. I can hear. Yeah. Yeah. Hi everyone. So I just need to present some kind of. So let me begin with the history of the Paragoda division. Paragoda belongs to the Bulasingala and Kalutara district, especially close to the Kukuleganga Dam. So there are a lot of flood situations and the lot of implications and the damage has been occurred in a particular area. In 2017, thousands of lives in that particular area. So my primary objectives were to collect and the data of the early warning reception of the particular vulnerable community, and just to analyze the emergency preparedness level, because it's very important. People are being ready for the evacuations as well, and the early warning reception is one important point as well as. So the data collection was done with the open-ended questionnaire as well as the disseminated database in the disaster management. So there are a lot of the damages being occurred, and as well as 78 samples being identified with the particular situation. So in Kalutara district, especially in the Paragoda area, 2015, 16, 17, and 18. So a lot of information collected with that particular community. There are very important points being done. So in 2015, there are a lot of people being affected with the floods. And 2016, without the interview sample, so there are a lot of people being affected as well. And in 2017, 79% of the particular community totally been affected with the flood situation. Then it's a very critical situation. They have been completely damaged. They have been completely affected, and the 14% of this community has been affected with the landslide as well. So this is and the 2017. If we are talking about the total community, so out of 78 samples, there are 95% of the community however been affected with the particular situation, especially for the flood situation. And in 2018 as well, more than 30% of the community been affected with as well. So the one of a very important point of the reception of the early warning, but 82% of they are receiving some kind of method, but more than 15% receiving anything. So emergency preparedness is one of a very important point, but evacuation is very important point. Once the early warning being given by the disaster management center, the people has to get a very prior evacuations as well. But there are no any communication, there are no any knowledge of 21% of the community being identified in the Paragoda area as well. So the evacuation routes, they are the very important thing, but 34% of these communities they don't know about this. So at the night time people are sleeping, they need some kind of emergency responses as well as the emergency messages and for the evacuations. I mean, the flood situation in 2017, more than 550 millimeters rain been identified, been occurred in Kalpal district along with the Kaluganga. So there are a lot of casualties, damages, and deaths been recorded in Kaluganga area. So, but more than 43% of the community been not been evacuated, not been aware of the nighttime reception as well. So conclusion is one of very important. 73 of the community receives early warning through the any kind of mode, but 21% not. But around 25% communities are not aware of the safe evacuation locations. That is very, very critical situations, and we had to get a lot of the trainings and evacuation drills for these communities as well. So they, as a recommendation, need to enhance early warning reception through the proper channels, and the community level early warning dissemination has to be well enhanced as well. 65% of the communities did aware, but 35 not at the Bula Singhal Paragoda area. So more than 50 feet the flood situations been occurred in many areas of that particular situations. So people believe that the some kind of the lack of awareness and something happened in that particular Paragoda area. So this is very important. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pradeep Podipili, and I think it's a good study. And also, I know as we are in the disaster-related agencies, during from 16, 17, 18, we have consecutive southwestern part of the country during our onset of the southwest monsoon, and also related with that little bit mountainous area in that area. So very heavy rainfall normally received in that area due to the especially orographic effect due to southwest monsoon period. So with that, I think the floor is open for the Q&A session. Is there any question from our participant? If not, I have one question from Mr. Pradeep. Did you just about the discussion, did you have any clue of the perception of the warnings, weather warnings about that community?
Yeah, actually, because we asked about the perception of the warning, that the people believe the warning. Actually, through the Met Department and through the Disaster Management Center, the people know that the Met Department warnings are disseminated by the Disaster Management Center. So they believe that warning. But the problem is the reception is one of very important point, but they don't have any reception method. Sometimes there are no any signals, and there are any community warnings in the systems. And the Paragoda is a mostly highly vulnerable area for the flood, and more than 50 feet been identified in 2017 flood situations as well. And there's only one location for the evacuation, that is a school, and even the temple have already been inundated for many times, and that is a very important point. So some people believe opening of the sluice gates of the Kukule Dam is one of a cause for that, but there is no any scientific evidences so far that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pradeep. I think, do you have any recommendations to improve the awareness within the people? Because we know the awareness should be in the regarding the uncertainty of the forecast, as well as the dissemination method also, and some IT skills also. There should be some kind of knowledge, no? Is there any plan? Or
Yeah, actually, after the research, because we could able to develop even one evacuation center with all facilities, and even the awareness is being given, but it's not enough. So the village disaster management committees are very important, because we are not every time going. All the disaster management officials are not going to the villages every time. So there should be some kind of leaders to be formed at the ground level, so then they can lead the others where to go, and how we are getting the messages, something like that. We have experienced it in that one in the Ratnapur area also, because we have developed one small village like in that way. So we have to give some kind of awareness of the search and rescue, and some it's a little thing, the first aids and evacuations and village security, something these. So I'm not recommending to maintain a separate disaster management committee in that particular area, but there are a lot of committees, maybe the Sanasa committee, maybe so other the funeral committees. So we can add our knowledge, we can add our sources to that particular committees, and we can update these committees as a disaster management committees. So that is a very important thing, village disaster management committees, and awareness has to be well enhanced. Otherwise, so, and awareness means a two-way awareness. The community awareness, the community know many things, because officials know many things, but we should integrate the community knowledge and the official.
yes, as you mentioned, the join with that officers and the community is very important, and also. Is there actually I have another point of that, because now the meteorological perspective as well, now they are mostly go for the crowdsourcing, and also the citizen science, like that type of topic is basically mostly go for with that community base. That is very important.
Yeah.
I think the disaster management center also now develop some mobile app to get some updated from the community.
Yeah, we have developed some app. It is called Apada. So that I think that applications has to be taken to that particular community, not only the Paragoda area, so but also everywhere in the country. But there must be limited people having some kind of the smartphones, but we have to use the limited resources as well, because we are not recommending to have all the people we will have some kind of a smartphone. No, if they have some kind of one or two phone in the village committee, so they can manage the other committees. It's like a cluster basis evacuation system, cluster basis awareness system, cluster basis the disaster management system. These kind of things has to be enhanced as well.
I think your ideas is also tallied with very well with the Professor Hettige, and he mentioned that keep activating that groups and also facilitate with that the required instruments and other things what they required for that purpose. I think this very well matched with that your studies and also the Professor Hettige's recommendation. Thank you very much, Pradeep. The floor is so yeah. Dr. Nuwan, is there anything to add?
No, actually, I really enjoyed the presentation. So if there are no more questions, I think our presenters have already presented. So I would like to summarize the session. Anusha, should I start with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I think we had a wonderful session. In a way, if we take the ultimate purpose of this symposium was to bring the academia and the policy together and the practitioners together. So even in this session, that reflected very well, because we had 4 presenters, first two from the academia, and the last two from the practice, who are in the practice. And as Ms. Anusha mentioned, Professor Siri's research work, it matched with the Pradeep Kodipilli's work. So it's like we are in a right path in merging this academia and the practice. And in addition to that, if we go on to the exact theme of this session, which is on communicating early warning. So we know that after about 2005 tsunami and in the recent history, that these upstream communication is properly established. Upstream institutions are properly established, but the issue was with whether the information is actually communicated to the downstream. But looking at this research, we can have a very good hope that the research are currently ongoing to communicate this exactly to the ground level. And I think in the future, we will have a better, even if because these presentations were based in Sri Lanka. So I think Sri Lanka, in terms of communicating disaster warning, in early warning, will be in a better position than today. So I would like to congratulate all the presenters and the researchers who are doing this marvelous work. And it will definitely help to enhance the position in Sri Lanka future. Ms. Anusha, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, yes, I fully agree with you. Yeah, I think we are in the right path now. The coordination with all the related stakeholders, and especially for the crowdsourcing and the messages and data from our community base. It's a very important. So I think this is a very a good initiative, and also I should thank to especially for Dr. Nuwan. You did a lot for that behind that scene, the successful of that event. I really appreciate. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. And we would like to see in the future events like this, because that get the all the practitioners and as academia together and get that as a department of meteorology. It's very important to learn from that type of studies. Is one stage is very important. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Nuwan.
Thank you all. Then here we would like to, as co-chairs, we would like to declare the close of the session. Thank you very much and enjoy your evening in Sri Lanka.
Thank you.